welcome back.
Yeah. So, as you may or may not know, we've been doing this kind of podcast thing for, this is now week 3, basically running as an advent calendar through December, leading up to the premiere of our films, The Gig and The Red Hair Tie.
Yes.
Yours filmed, finished 5 years ago, mine about 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah,
And they've been going through festivals and sitting on hard drives.
for a long time.
and now we're finally coming to the public release of both films.
Yeah.
And so this is episode 3. Last week we talked a little bit about you and
Red Hair Tie.
The Red Hair Tie, and this week I get to fuel my ego and talk about me, my favourite thing in the world. Or at least it used to be. I'm not so sure if that's so much the case anymore.
Yeah, sure is that.
Yeah.
Alright, so, well, let's track back. How did you start to get into the film industry? Well, actually, music.
Yes.
Music is what you started first.
Yeah,
with,
so in the same way that dance was your first
Yeah.
passion, music was my first. So, I mean, I've always kind of had music in my heart and in my soul, I guess. Both my parents have backgrounds in music and performance and in art. Both are very creative. So there are pictures of me as a little kid, you know, sitting with each parent with different instruments. There's a picture that we have upstairs of me sitting in my mom's lap with a little drum.
True.
I'm like, I don't know, a couple of months or 1 year old or something. And there's a picture of me and my father sitting, each with our little acoustic guitars. I'm maybe 2 or 3 years old, and we're sitting with our little guitars and yeah, I've always had like harmonicas and different, you know, xylophones, and I've still got a little baby piano up on a bookshelf somewhere, you know. So there's always been, you know, in my blood. You know, I grew up watching my father play music with his best friend Joel. They were always writing songs and hanging out, and yeah, my first electric guitar is the electric guitar I watched him play growing up. And that was then the first electric guitar that I wrote all my first songs on, and even features in the first music video for Hell House. So it's kind of always been around me and in my kind of life. And I think I kind of mentioned at one point, you know, I was in music lessons as a kid. My mum put me in both guitar and drum lessons in school from quite a young age. But interestingly, you know, the way that I've always been is when I have to follow a structure, like a traditional schooling kind of structure, my mind just goes, no, I don't want to do this. It starts to feel like homework. And so, although I was in classes to learn, I always struggled with being placed into a framework and being told, this is how you must do it. And I still struggle with that today. So I kind of fought against being in my classes and being told, no, you have to sit, you have to practice, you must do this, you know. And I didn't enjoy doing it when I was forced to do it. I wanted to do it when it kind of
flown through.
Yeah, when it just kind of comes to me. So I kind of lost the passion for it and the spark somewhere along the line. And then I mentioned, I think in the first episode, that when I was around 13 and we had music class in Sweden, and they kind of got the guitars out, and when I was able to still play a little bit and kind of pick it up, there was something still there. The way I noticed how suddenly the girls started showing me a little bit of interest, I was like, okay.
Good motivation.
Yeah, and then suddenly people that kind of weren't really speaking to me and didn't really, you know, I was kind of a bit bullied and ostracized, and suddenly there was a couple of people who suddenly started speaking to me and hanging out, so I started making some connection with people, not fully, but you know, there was something. Suddenly I had a thing.
Mm.
So then I kind of dusted off the old guitar and started kind of every evening sitting, just practicing chords and practicing and trying to figure out, you know, just, okay, how do I get my fingers to sit in the right place? How do I, you know, do these basic chords and play along to some basic songs? And yeah, and I just kind of, that's when I suddenly had this motivation, and it came from me rather than externally. And then then I was willing to place hours and hours and hours on end and play along with songs. And then I had there was a guy in my class called Oscar who played drums, and interestingly we had never really spoken, and he had other friend groups and stuff. But then suddenly in music class we were, you know, because he could play a bit of drums and I could play a bit of guitar, we were like, okay, well, why don't we start playing and doing some bits? And then a guy from Ireland started in our class, a guy called Jesse, and this is in Sweden. So you know, we were all speaking Swedish, and Jesse hadn't learnt Swedish yet, and I could speak Swedish, but obviously could also speak English, having grown up in the UK. So he and I gelled because I could speak with him, so I became something more of a comfort for him to be able to speak English together, and he could already play guitar quite well, so we would jam and play together. And then I had a neighbour called BC who could play. She played violin and piano, so
That's cool.
yeah, so Asian heritage, strict parents, classical trained, practice, but then, you know, played a bit of keys and stuff with us. So we started a band called The Upkeeps in school, and we played some covers, and we played some shows like the school talent show and school festivals and these kinds of things. And that's kind of how we got started and how I kind of got hooked. And then Jesse introduced me to bands like Green Day and more rock and punk, and that was where suddenly something clicked in my brain and went, ooh, what's this?
A new
wow.
world.
Yeah. And then I got into the world of skateboarding, was doing this and meeting other people, and got into more punk rock and the rock and kind of skate and rock, and started finding a bit of an image and who I was, you know. Then there was this slippery slope of, you know, then I started falling into drink and drugs. And when I moved back to the UK, I was kind of hanging out with some musicians and people, but it became less about the music and more about the drink and the drugs and the partying.
More about the lifestyle.
More about the lifestyle, wanting to kind of be a rock star and have the adoration rather than the creation. But I met a couple of cool people, and we wrote some songs. So there's this one guy who lives close to me, Matt, and it was kind of cool because I bought my first 125cc motorcycle from his dad, and he played music, and so I was always into motorcycles. I bought this motorcycle, and he and I hung out, and together we wrote what ended up being my first single. We wrote Hell House together. So he and I kind of were jamming on Hell House, and I then developed it further to what became my version of it. But that's the first kind of iteration or version of it. Another guy who was very much into, he made his own films and music. So this guy who made films, he's the guy who made the movies Sex, Lies and Depravity, which ended up being the basis for the film festival that I started, Depravity Fest, which was a film and music festival. So he and I, he was kind of an inspiration because he was already making films, and he and I wrote 3am Boy together. He had like a poem or something that was 3am Boy, and we started jamming. So there were a couple of these people that I was meeting that kind of became more lifestyle rather than creation, but where little sparks and seeds started coming in, which became the foundation for some of the songs that then grew out of it. I then went off to Sweden, did my military service, and kind of fell away from it for a while. But then during a break from military service, I was invited to a friend's birthday party, and it was actually at the Asian restaurant that you like, rice with the Asian buffet.
So that was back in Sweden then?
This was back in Sweden.
Yeah.
I was doing my military service and I had a break, and it was my friend's birthday party. It was either Philip. Yeah, it was. I think it was actually Philip's birthday party, and so he and I had some mutual friends, and then he introduced me to some of his friends from high school. So, actually, interestingly, before that, so let me backtrack.
Okay.
Put a pin in that.
Yeah.
The day before this birthday party, so I was on leave, and the day before I was walking around Gamla stan, Old Town in Stockholm, Sweden, and I randomly bump into Oscar, the drummer,
the guy you were starting everything with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he and I hadn't spoken since high school and since playing, and I kind of was like, oh wow, what a random coincidence. How are you? Are you still playing music? And it turned out that he was like, yes, I'm actually at a community college taking a music school. It's called Kulturama, so people in Sweden will know what that is. And it's like a creative arts school that has dance and theatre and active filmmaking and music program. And he was there studying music as a drummer, and I went, wow, okay, that's so cool. Hey, just off chance, I'm here for a while, would you be interested in renting a music space, meeting and just jamming and just hanging out? You know, we've not played in a long time, it would be cool to hang out. And he was up for it. He was like, yeah, let's meet, let's jam. I was like, oh, that's so cool. Okay, so now a couple of days later, I'm at this Asian restaurant for my friend's birthday party, and everyone sits down. I don't know everybody, but I know Philip and I know Lucas, and because we were in all in high school together, and then there was a couple of Philip's friends from gymnasium, so upper high school, whatever, college. And so we sit down, we start talking, and there's one seat empty next to me, and there's a guy who they weren't sure if he was going to turn up or not, and suddenly this guy, Yuan, turns up. And he wasn't sure if he was going to turn up because he had applied to medical school. And it's just so, the reason I'm sharing this is just because it's so interesting how the universe pulled this all together.
Yeah.
So he was accepted into a school in Uppsala, which is like an hour or so north of Stockholm. And he was at the induction day. And just as he was walking into the induction, he receives a phone call from Karolinska, which is the most renowned medical school, not only in Sweden, but it's one of the most famous medical research facilities in Europe and in the world. And he'd applied there as well, but I guess he was a reserve or whatever, so he was going to this induction day to Uppsala, to medical school there instead. And just as he's walking into the induction day, his phone rings, he answers, and it's Karolinska, and they go, "You've been accepted." And he's telling us, because he comes basically in, and he goes, "Bye bitches, I got into Karolinska," hangs up, turns around from induction, leaves, gets on the train, comes back and arrives just in time to arrive at the restaurant just as we're sitting down. The seat that's free is the seat next to me. He sits down and joins us, and he tells us this story, and I go, oh, wow, that's so cool. What an introduction to this guy. Yeah. And, you know, so that's how I met Johan for the first time. And we're sitting down, we're having food, and so because he sat next to me, we start talking, and we just start talking about music, and it turns out that, you know, he and I share a love of rock and blues and metal, and he's talking about Black Sabbath and all of these bands and his inspiration. I'm like, that's so cool. And it turns out that he plays bass, and I was like, no way. I was like, that's pretty cool. So I tell him the coincidence that I meet Oscar the day before, and I'm like, so on the off chance, I don't know, do you have any plans tomorrow? He's like, well, originally I was going to be in Uppsala at med school, but I'm back now and I don't start for a while, so actually I'm free. I was like, well, I have this music room booked with a drummer. We don't have a bassist. Would you like to come and jam tomorrow? He's like, hell yeah. So suddenly we've got, you know, a drummer, bassist, me singing guitar, and we just meet and we start jamming. And that's, you know, that's how Our Untold Story basically was born. Like, that's how
Wow.
it started. And when Johan started at Karolinska, he met a guy called Mahmoud who plays lead guitar and invited him over. We actually had another guy called Xander who was actually at the birthday party as well, and he was our first guitarist. So we ended up having Xander and Mahmoud. It was actually Xander's party. You know, I was telling you about the Vote for Pedro t-shirt?
Yes.
It was his party where that t-shirt got stolen. That's not a story for you guys. Maybe on another episode. Maybe on another episode. But yeah, so that's basically how we started, and there's some great videos on YouTube of our first rehearsals and first shows and first bits and pieces. But yeah, that's kind of how the band started, interestingly. It's just so interesting how the universe kind of pulled us all together, right place, right time, right opportunities. But yeah, so we played together for a couple of years, and you know, as bands go, there were member changes and bits and pieces, and you know, a lot of it sadly was to do with my attitude. I got a big ego, and you know, I'm a visionary, so I very much had this image of what I wanted it to be and what I wanted it to achieve. You know, there's a much longer story there, but you know, there was a lot of me having an attitude towards people and having big expectations and letting my ego get in the way. And sadly, I burnt a lot of bridges, and I didn't treat people the best that I could have, sadly. So, you know, I managed to mend some bridges. I don't know if I really have completely. But anyway, there were member changes, and people came, people went, and yeah, that's a whole longer story of the band's journey. That's what is going to be in this documentary that I've been making for a couple of years, which we'll talk about more.
Doing
a
documentary about the band, which is cool.
Yeah, so
which is a good. You filmed a lot during the time you were being in that band, so you made that opportunity for yourself to be like, let's record stuff.
Yeah, which you know came from this ego thing of wanting, but also I think there is a positive aspect to it, because it means we have all of this footage, we have this window in to that period of time, and you know, so I think there is a benefit to it, and you know, it's lessons learned. It's made me who I am today, and you know, that is also a big basis for what eventually became the gig as well. But you know, fast forward a couple of years, basically, with all the member changes and things happening, you know, and Yuan in medical school, Mahmoud in medical school, Oscar going off and doing other bands, him introducing Philip, another drummer he knew from Kulturama, but then Philip going off and becoming an engineer. Kim became, you know, we had a couple of bassists in between, but you know, they came and went. We had a lot of guitarists that came and went. Kim then, who is still the bassist today, he joined, but he's had kids, and you know, and I moved country, so, but Kim and I are still trying to figure stuff out, and you know, we're the ones who have kept it kind of alive. But fast forward, basically, I was like, I need to do something where I'm not reliant on 4 or 5 other guys pulling in the same direction. So that's kind of where I found acting, and it started with the music video for Hell House, where I ended up playing the lead role, both playing as the character in the band, but also playing the character in the film, which interestingly added to the style of the song, because it's a little, it's you know, it's a bit trippy and psychedelic.
To Hell House.
Except for Hell House, which is the first music video we did, directed by a guy called Sebastian Sørgaard, Norwegian filmmaker. So he was actually the one who suggested that, well, instead of getting someone else to play this character and you're just the band playing at this house party, why not you also be that character, and then you're looking at yourself, looking back, and we kind of figured out this kind of world together, and it added to the thing. And what was interesting is that was my first bit of acting, and I liked it, and you know, I got some good feedback, and you know, I was acting in my music videos first, and then I started doing kind of student films and working as an extra. And kind of the story went a little bit like, okay, this is something interesting I can do in between playing shows, touring, recording, something that's for me. But I was so used to, with the band, being up front and center, being the kind of the front man. So being an extra or being a small character wasn't fulfilling. So I started having conversations with the directors and lead actors and the people that I was looking up to, and going, okay, well, what do I need to do to get up front and center, to do, where I can create and be a little bit more creative in the film process. And the red thread, the common denominator, was training and creating your own projects. So training, I applied for a community college drama school, Bromma, which is where I ended up meeting my good friend Christian, who you know, and started creating my own projects. I was very lucky. I met my ex-girlfriend Sarah. We met on a project that I was doing with a guy who helped direct another one of my music videos. I was acting in one of his projects. His name is Ludwig Gier, a fantastic filmmaker. He's gone off to have an amazing career. But he helped me make one of my music videos for Go For Broke, and so I was acting in one of his projects, and Sarah was first ADing that project. So we got to talking, and it turned out that she was writing a feature film, which actually turned out to be Sariad. And so we got to talking, and she mentioned after a couple of weeks that there was a role that she thought I could fit in. So that's how I got the role of Oliver in Sariad, and we got to talking, and I also got to come on board as a co-producer. And I basically did with that film what I did with the band. With our first demo, I kind of had this vision of, well, if we're already recording a demo, why not, everything is image, everything is marketing, which is what I'm good at. I'm not necessarily the best writer or singer or actor, but my skill lies in having an image, a vision, and finding the people that are the best at delivering that vision. So with the demo, I packaged it, created a cover and the inside booklet, and figured out what we needed to do to release it and create CDs and get it up on Spotify and all of those things. So that's how I started my record company. Then the next step was, okay, how do you create your own projects? Well, I was making music videos already, so short films is just a music video with dialogue. And then I, did the same thing with Sariad that I did with the demo. Was, okay, we're already making this film. How do you package it? How do you figure out to get DVDs and get it distributed and available online so that people can buy it? Good artwork, good posters, and hype it up and make it bigger than what it actually is. I mean, the film and the first record that I released and that film, maybe they're not the best film in the or music in the world, but so many people don't make anything or get so afraid of releasing something, and it's part of the process. That's what I've learned, is it's better to get something out there than to try and make something perfect that never gets created. And that's where my skill set lies, and that's how I kind of started moving into acting and filmmaking. And interestingly, while I was at Bromma, I realised that theatre wasn't my jam. I always wanted to do film. And interestingly, it was Christian that found Prague Film School for me and suggested it. So I applied to Prague Film School, their Acting for Film program, and that's where I flew over and started focusing on acting on camera. And I just, I went all in and just did as many student films as possible. And it was it was at Francisca's workshop where I met you in Prague as well. So again, the universe doing its thing and pulling things together. So, and we met lots of our mutual friends there. And and it was during my time at Prague Film School where I met the casting director Maya, who cast me in Carnival Row opposite Orlando Bloom and Cara Delevingne, where I then got to be in both seasons. It was thanks to that, I did another short film that ended up in Cannes, and I got to travel there and meet a lot of people. And then I came to Berlin, met with a bunch of agents, and I signed with my agent, who I've been with since 2018, so 7 years now, Caprice Crawford at Crawford Talents. And then I got the opportunity to act in Atlantic Crossing, the Emmy Award winning show opposite a very famous Swedish actress called Sofia Helin. I got to be in a show called The Defeated. I think it then got released as Shadowplay or vice versa. Got to work with Taylor Kitsch. Lots of opportunities there. You know, and and after Saryad, I enjoyed making that with Sarah. So I was reading some of her projects, and we found a script that she'd written called Rotten Love.
Yes.
And again, so that was only a 3-page script, but I could see a bigger project, and then I developed that into a bigger 11-minute film. That was my directing debut. That was the first film that I directed, and I had my friends Mikke and Johannes helping me on that, and Sarah and I acted in that. So that was the first film that I directed and I acted in, which has kind of been a red thread because that's what I did in the gig as well.
Yeah.
So then how we got to the gig was during the pandemic, I ended up doing my master's at Raindance. And Raindance it's a film festival and a film school created by a guy called Elliot Grove. And their whole thing is very much the kind of Robert Rodriguez independent filmmaking style of look around what you have around you, who do you have? And that's how I had always created my projects. So it fit with my philosophy of going, it doesn't need to be the best, just figure out what locations, what people, what props, what do you have around you that you can create a story with. And that's how I had created all of my music and film projects before. And originally my plan was I wanted to create something like an action film. So I wanted to design action set pieces and go, these are the action set pieces, these are the stunts that I want to have, these fights and these things, and then how do I create a story around that? So that's how I originally started focusing. But then the pandemic hit, so I wasn't able to do the action parts. So it became that I needed to do something like a drama, a contained drama. And I was originally working with another filmmaker friend from Sweden, Niklas, who is a friend of mine and Sarah's, who we'd act in a bunch of his films, and we were creating a project together. Which I still love the story, but then he and I started having different ideas and different thoughts. We decided to part ways. So then in a scramble to make my final grad film, I was like, well, what do I know? Well, I know music. And a thing that kept coming up is when you're creating a story, tell what you know. So that's how the gig came up. And it's basically a fictional dramatization of me and my experiences with the gig, with the band, with Our Untold Stories. So my character is my name and the band's name is the band's name, but the characters are all different characters, and there's bits and pieces of reality but in a new story. And the idea was to create something as a proof of concept that I would then make into a bigger feature film, which is still a goal and a dream of mine. And we were very lucky. You introduced me to John at ProCam Take 2. Yeah. Sadly, that company doesn't exist anymore, but he backed us and backed the film and introduced us to our DOP, Saul. And and we filmed it at the Questus Theatre in Ealing. It was a 5-day shoot. And, we went there, shot the previs, and I had everything in my head, and it was, very much inspired by, like, Birdman and Whiplash and these kinds of... I wanted to have this vibe of like a one-shot almost type thing. So there's a line by one of the characters that says, you've got 10 minutes. And from that moment till the end of the film is 10 minutes. So it is in real time. And then I did a little kind of fun thing. Kim, our bassist, in the music video for Go For Broke, Kim plays a janitor. And... so he and I have always had this running joke that whenever I make a film project or something, I'm going to have a janitor character. So in the gig, we've got this janitor character, which of course Kim plays, and I think that's going to be a running gag little Easter egg.
for every film.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Nice. So that's kind of how the gig came about, and I don't want to give away too much about the film, because obviously it's going to be... Let's see what someone's saying here. So, true, it's better to get something creative yourself to open your own door rather than wait for someone else to give you the keys to open the door. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I mean that's very 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 true and good insights, and I agree. And yeah, it was filmed at Questers. It was filmed at Questers.
Yeah.
So,
but I think also, just to track back a little,
yeah,
when you, at least from what I've heard, when you started out in the industry or within the creative world, there's a lot more, at least from what I'm hearing from my side as well, is there is a lot more that drive of just do, because you just may not know the whole world yet, but you just know that you want to do it. And for me, at least, it was the more I learned about the world, the more I learned how you play the rules, the more is a structure of how to do certain things. You kind of get then backtracked.
You get in your own way. That's something that I've noticed with you and I is sometimes naivety, like ignorance is bliss, right? Sometimes when you don't know how it works, you just do something and people go, oh, but that's not how it works. And it's like, well, let me just try. And sometimes you've got to do that and kind of get out of your own way. Because sometimes once you start learning all of the ins and outs and how it should be and all of the things, you get in your own way, and then your project suddenly balloons into something so big, and you're like, oh, I need so much money and so much stuff to make this work, that you end up going, well, it's just impossible.
Yeah.
Where sometimes if you just scale it back and just go, okay, let's go back to basics, find the fun. It's just a couple of friends, whether it be a couple of friends in a rehearsal room just playing some random tunes, or like when you do your dance and you just hired that room in Berlin and you just went and danced for yourself, and you just found that freedom and that flow, and or you get some friends together and get a camera and you just film some stuff, and you just find the joy in it and see what comes out of it. It doesn't always have to be, let me create something for the industry. What does the audience want? Sometimes it's just, what do I want to create and have some fun? And sometimes it doesn't even need to go out there, and sometimes it does. But and I think that's what you and I are finding now, and why we've finally started creating this podcast and are finally releasing these films. Is like, okay, maybe they're not perfect, but it's who we were at that time. It's the creation of what we were at that time, and rather than just having a gap in your career, just go, we learnt from that. That's who we were and where we were now. Would we do something different now? Sure. And that's what we're doing. That's why we're creating new projects. That's why, you're developing this feature. That's why I'm working on this action film. I was talking about how I wanted to create these action set pieces and create an action film. Well, I wasn't able to do that at the time because of the pandemic. But that's what I'm doing now with another project where a bunch of, Kyle, who's written some stuff, he's been part of it, where we filmed out in the woods and did some stuff, so that's the next thing. It's taking a lot of time, but that's kind of the next thing. And if I end up making a feature of the gig or not, maybe not. But when I look back at the projects that I've done, everything that has come into place has been when I kind of have gotten out of my own way and allowed the universe to let things fall into place at the right place and the right time. So that's what I'm trying to do now, and what we're trying to discuss constantly, of getting out of your own way and just finding the fun, finding the joy, finding the passion, finding the spark, and just seeing what comes out of the process.
Yeah, and it's something that I want to go back to more for myself. And also just I'm realizing more and more, is like, the less you have available in terms of, let's say, money-wise, the more creative you are. It
forces you to find creative solutions and adapt and do different things. Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of enough babble for today. Thank you guys for watching and listening. As always, it's been live on Instagram. We filmed it on the big camera. It will come out on YouTube whenever it ends up coming out. I keep having technical difficulties. I'll try and have it up tomorrow, but our next episode will actually be on Christmas Eve, so it'll be sooner. You don't have to wait until Sunday, because that's when both of our films will be premiering live on YouTube. The links are actually already available. I'll share the links, and the gig will premiere first at 10:30 a.m. local London time. So for our friends in Berlin and Stockholm and Europe, that will be 11:30 for you guys. But at 10:30 a.m. UK time, the gig will premiere on YouTube, and then straight after, a couple of minutes later, at 10:45, the Red Hair Tie will premiere, and we will go live slightly before, so maybe 10:20, have a little bit of a chat and kind of in preparation, and then we'll kind of be watching it, and maybe do a bit of live commentary while watching it, and then have a bit of a discussion and an episode afterwards on Christmas Eve. So yeah, we'll see you then, and that's when you get to finally see the films. So scary and nervous, but yeah, thank you very much, guys. Thank you for being here, and have a lovely Sunday, and we'll see you on the 24th. Bye-bye.